Today, I want to pit two of the most popular religions in the world of money against each other: real estate and the stock market. We have two guys, Alex and Ryan. They each had $50,000 in their pockets. They were the same age, lived in the same city, and earned the same amount. But today, one of them feels like a party animal, and the other like a boring guy with an Excel spreadsheet. However, 20 years from now, one of them will discover he simply bought himself a second job, and the other will discover he bought himself freedom. And the difference between them is that one forgot to count his hours, and the other forgot to count the zeros at the end of his check. Let's start with Alex. Alex is a guy of action. He doesn't want to look at charts, he wants to own something tangible. He takes his 50 grand and uses it as a 20% down payment on a $250,000 house in a nice suburb. He takes out a 30-year mortgage at 7% interest. His monthly payment is about $1,330. He finds a tenant willing to pay $1,800 a month. On paper, everything looks perfect. 1,800 minus 1,330 is almost $500 in net profit every month. Alex feels like a genius. He tells all his friends at barbecues that he's now a real estate investor. He has keys, he has an address, he has status. So what does Ryan do? Ryan is the boring guy. He takes his 50 grand and simply sends it into an index fund that tracks the entire stock market. No leverage, no keys, no tenants. He sets up an automatic transfer of $300 every month and forgets about it. When coworkers ask him what he invests in, he says, "Index funds." They nod politely and change the subject. No one is impressed with Ryan. On day one, Alex has a house, a tenant, and a cool story to tell about dinner. Ryan only has an email confirmation of the transaction. Emotionally, it's not even a contest. Alex leads 100-0. But emotions and math are two different universes. For the first few years, Alex lives the landlord's dream. Rent checks arrive on the first of every month. He drives past his house and thinks, "This is mine." He writes off the mortgage interest and depreciation on his taxes, saving a couple $1,000s a year. He watches similar houses in the neighborhood rise in value. Everything about this investment seems tangible and smart. Ryan, meanwhile, walks into his office once a quarter and sees the number go up a little, then down a little, then up again. The first year, his 50,000 turns into 55. The second, into 61. It seems like nothing is happening. He doesn't have a key in his pocket. He can't point this asset out the car window. It's just pixels on a screen. Alex's friends ask him about the house. Ryan's friends ask him nothing. Social proof convinces Alex he's winning by a landslide. Let's look at the numbers at the end of year 3. Alex has collected almost $65,000 in rent. His mortgage payment is about $48,000. It seems like he has an extra $17,000 in his pocket. That sounds great until you start subtracting everything else. Property taxes eat up $3,000 a year. Insurance is another $1,500. In 3 years, he's already replaced a water heater for $1,200, fixed a leaky roof for $2,800, and faced a month of downtime when his tenant moved out. That month cost him not only rent, but also money for cleaning and finding a new tenant. Alex manages the building himself to save money, but that means 10 p.m. calls about burst pipes, weekend showings, and endless hassles with contractors. After all the real expenses, Alex's net cash flow over 3 years is only a couple $1,000s. That's a far cry from the $17,000 that looked so nice on the bar napkin. And this is on the condition that he does not value his own hour of work at a single cent. Meanwhile, Ryan has invested his $50,000 plus $10,080 in monthly installments. At an average return of 10%, his portfolio is worth about $76,000. He spent 0 hours managing, made 0 calls, and experienced 0 emergencies. But Alex still has a trump card: leverage. His house has appreciated by 3 to 4% annually and is now worth about $280,000. His equity, the difference between the house's value and what he owes the bank, has grown to $60,000. This is real wealth, and it only came about because he used the bank's money. That's the power of leverage, and it's the one advantage that's hard for a stock investor to replicate as easily. A rent check is a number everyone talks about. It's what you see in YouTube previews, what bloggers and your friends brag about, but no one talks about what happens to that check before you actually put the money in your pocket. Idle real estate isn't just a setback, it's a necessary expense. the average home in America sits empty for 1 month out of the year. It's not a disaster, but it's a full mortgage payment out of pocket on zero income. And what about repairs? The general rule is set aside 1 to 2% of the home's value per year. For a $250,000 home, that's up to $5,000 annually. 1 year, it might just be a $200 faucet replacement. Another, it might be a $7,000 heating system replacement that can't be postponed because it's August and your tenant is threatening legal action. If you're not setting aside money every month for these future disasters, you're not running a business. You're just hoping for luck. And luck in the real estate world is a fickle thing. There's another risk that no one likes to talk about over a beer: bad tenants. A tenant who stops paying and knows how to drag out the eviction process under their state's laws can cost you 6 months' rent and thousands of dollars in legal fees. One such event can wipe out several years' worth of profit. None of this shows up in your net profit on paper, but it will definitely show up in your bank account. By year 5, Alex is already neck-deep in the reality of being a landlord. He's had his third tenant. He's replaced the roof for $8,500, survived an emergency plumbing repair, and a month of downtime. Yes, he raised the rent to $1,950, which helps, but property taxes and insurance have also increased. His actual return on investment after all real expenses hovers around 5%. Not bad, but nowhere near the 15 to 20% he dreamed of at the start. Ryan has been doing absolutely nothing all this time. His portfolio has grown from a starting $50,000 to $140,000 by year 7, including his modest monthly contributions. He didn't pick individual stocks. He didn't try to time the market. He simply didn't touch his money. The magic of compounding begins to accelerate. The return on his profits now generates more new wealth each year than his own contributions. Something important is happening beneath the surface. Alex's wealth is growing, but it requires constant attention and management. Ryan's wealth is growing exponentially, slowly at first, then faster and faster. Compounding is boring as hell for the first 5 years, but it's mind-blowing for the next 15. By year 10, Alex's house is worth about $340,000. His remaining mortgage balance is $166,000. This means his equity is approximately $174,000. Over 10 years, after deducting all repairs, taxes, and insurance, his actual investment beyond the down payment has added up to another $30,000. Ryan's portfolio, at this point, assuming an average return of 10%, is valued at $175,000. He invested $50,000 initially and $36,000 in installments. The rest is pure growth, and he spent exactly 0 weekends fixing other people's toilets. In their 10th year, they're surprisingly close in terms of net worth. Alex may be slightly ahead thanks to leverage, but here's the difference. Alex spent hundreds of hours managing, took on hundreds of thousands in debt, and concentrated all his money in one property in one zip code. Ryan spread his risk across thousands of the world's largest companies and never lost sleep over a tenant's call. This is where the story finally splits. By 2020, Alex's house is worth about $500,000. The mortgage is almost paid off. His equity is $450,000 or $50,000. He's been collecting rent all this time, but after 20 years of maintenance, ongoing repairs, and at least one major renovation, his total net cash flow could be between $40,000 and $80,000. Perhaps more if the market was hot, or less if it was stagnant. Ryan's portfolio, at the same 10% annual interest rate, grows to $450,000 by the 20th year. And that's with a total investment of $122,000 over the entire period. The remaining $300,000 is pure compound interest. No debt, no tenants, no 2 a.m. calls about burst pipes. When you compare their net worths, they're in the same league, somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 each. But how they got there is 2 different planets. Alex worked for his money. Ryan made it work for him. Alex was stressed, had concentrated risk, and had low liquidity. He couldn't just take a chunk out of the house if he desperately needed cash. Ryan had volatility. The market was up and down, but he had complete liquidity and absolute freedom. And here's the detail that changes the math radically. If Ryan had increased his monthly contribution by just $200, his portfolio would have jumped to $600,000 in 20 years. In stocks, Increasing the contribution has a multiplier effect. In real estate, increasing your investment usually means buying another house, taking out another mortgage, and doubling your workday. If I only showed you the downsides of real estate, I'd be acting like a typical financial blogger trying to sell you something. Stocks have their own brutal risks, which many people like to keep quiet about. Volatility is painful. In 2008, the market fell almost 40%. In March 2020, it plummeted 34% in 1 month. If Ryan had 150,000 and saw it turn into 95,000 in a couple of weeks, that's not just a number on a screen. It's a punch to the gut. Most ordinary investors at times like that panic sell everything and come back after the market has already risen, locking in huge losses. Stocks don't offer a tangible monthly check. Dividends do exist, but they yield about 2% annually. Not enough to live on right now. And Ryan doesn't have tax magic like depreciation. Real estate investors can deduct the theoretical aging of a building from their taxes, even if the house actually appreciates. It's a legal tax haven that stock investors simply don't have access to. Real estate wins in certain situations. If you're willing to treat it as a full-fledged business, not a hobby, if you know how to find properties where the rent more than covers all expenses, if you use strategies like house hacking, living in one part of the house and renting out the rest, reducing your housing costs to zero, if you understand how the 1031 exchange works, allowing you to roll profits into new properties tax-free for decades. Real estate isn't a bad investment, it's work, which many mistakenly consider a passive income. Alex and Ryan both left that meeting thinking they'd made the right move. Alex believed in the tried-and-true path of land ownership. Ryan believed the market would do the work for him. The real trap isn't real estate or stocks. The real trap is choosing one path over another based on news headlines or the advice of a neighbor at a barbecue, without ever considering the cost of your time, your stress, and your risks over a 20-year horizon. The next time someone tells you that real estate always wins, or that stocks are the only way to go, ask them one question. Have you included everything in your calculations? Because the answer that takes every little detail into account is the only answer that matters for your future. And if you want to know what happens when you combine both strategies, owning a home while simultaneously investing in the market, that's a whole new level of play. One that could change everything you've ever known about money. But more on that another time.